Dota stands for Defense of the Ancients. Both teams have a thing called an ancient that ties the team together. Mars does not care for either ancient. He is not god of them, nor are they god of he, the mightiest and most formidable opponent one could ever face head on. As a matter of fact, Mars is one of the only heroes that can stand in the enemy fountain and not immediately die or even barely be scratched. In real life, Mars is the defender of the soldier. He is the spear that shakes when wars abound in our futures. Yes, I mean that in more than one way. The emperor of the most ancient times of Rome was said to possess a spear of Mars in his royal home shrine. It was said to shake when a war was bound in stories dating as back as the first kings of Rome. But Mars would outlast any king, and his favor was believed to be a chiefly important one to earn, as the Romans would conduct plenty of what Mars was the patron of: war, and perhaps, as some surprise, agriculture. Agriculture and shepherding may be far from what you would expect the god Mars or perhaps any of the heroes of Dota to be in command of, so let me elaborate. Mars represents the causes of humankind to not only survive but to thrive, and to have things to live for. He defended soldiers and sent them back to their homes at the end of a long war. So why does Mars in Dota say nothing about the home, the shepherd, or the harvest? Put it this way, records show Mars had statues of him created across the entire time span of the Roman Empire. Mars changed in perception and indeed sometimes in name according to the time and land that he was worshipped upon. Mars Ultor is the figure that appears in Dota. Indeed, his name is both a clever joke towards Dota gameplay and a fortunate coincidence in the real names that Mars has possessed. We will find in this video series that fortunate coincidences, or the careful choosing of multiple lucky occurrences found in history and literature, is what leads not only to a memorable character, but a true one. This version of Mars came after, about 5 versions of Mars. Mars Ultor was created in response to Julius Caesar's assassination by Augustus Caesar in order to solidify a stance that Julius had been avenged. But what difference is there between Mars and Ares? You know Ares and may have been wondering this entire time why Mars is not Ares. Or maybe you never heard of Mars and only heard of Ares? Now, the Greek legend is more well known, sure, thanks to how romantic Greek myth can be, but don't get it wrong, Mars and Ares are the same god across different parts of time. The Romans co-opted the Greek pantheon, a realm of myth that I won't explore until my video about Zeus. The difference between Ares and Mars is that Ares, in any story, would have to pursue Aphrodite. For what those two different characters are famous for, Ares is more renowned for his undying passion for Aphrodite. Any story that would involve Ares would be required to be a love story, because of how he serves as almost an opposite, a foil to how to display love. In the story of Troy, the Iliad, Ares would fight on the side of Troy. The Iliad was written to a Greek audience, and so Ares would be an antagonist for opposing Greece in war. Although his might was difficult to match, even by other gods, Ares has been depicted as a one-dimensional villain since long before PlayStations. And so in order to make a more lovable character, Mars was chosen. Now we will discuss a more factoid-based style of Dota heroes, their abilities. Let's discuss Aghanim Shard, a part of every Dota video of mine. Aghanim Shard is an item that delivers a hero an ability that covers for their own personal weakness. Mars has a weakness where he is a fight initiator, but he has low damage or sustained damage. He often provides the tool of war, but he doesn't bring enough blood for his legion. To explain another way, part of why he is weak is due to his predictable maneuvers, his attacks following a rhythm that goes with the anthem, but don't worry, his wit is as wicked as his throwing arm. For Mars is one who knows the power of fire, and he is intelligent. When he uses this item, the spear leaves a burning, damaging trail of fire. First ability, Spear of Mars. When Mars uses this ability, he hurls his spear forward with the intent of impaling his opponent. Let me explain where this comes into play from the perspective of history and myth. In the works of Homer, such as the Iliad, Warriors on the battlefield would hurl their spears ahead of them, then rush into the foray. This was common for the Greek warriors such as Odysseus, Achilles, Ajax, or Agamemnon. Warriors could run headlong into battle, focusing entirely on defending themselves with their shield against arrows because their spear is already thrown. They run until they reach a melee, which is too horrendous of the archers to fire into that kind of fight. This did not always stop great marksmen such as Paris from firing into the midst of dueling men. The spear could possibly be recovered, but more often a sword was strapped to the man's side, or even somewhat likely he had another spear. As an observation, Roman soldiers would fight most often jabbing their spears around the side of their shield, while the style of Greek soldiers, known as hoplites, was to hold the spear above the shield and stab from above the top of the shield. When you watch Mars in Dota, he switches his attack pattern from top to bottom of the shield, but he mostly attacks at the bottom of the side. It's difficult to say, but it's not unfeasible that he is designed to appear Roman because of his choice to attack from those directions. God's Rebuke is the second ability, the pace of fighting and the massive usage of shields in warfare. So Mars hits the hardest with this ability, guaranteeing a critical hit. The more enemies you connect with his shield, the greater the result. He could do this repeatedly, and often in a fight. A shield is a powerful tool of war, and unlike sometimes thought, a weapon as much as armor. In history, any warrior from any culture would use the weight and bulk of their shield as a way to force enemies into vulnerable positions, or to turn a would-be attacker into a devastated foe. Romans, Vikings, knights, it didn't matter. The shield was as mobile as the spear. And if you want to know what a rebuke is, the name of the ability, it's an armed response. Third ability, Bulwark. A bulwark defends an area, perhaps a person's chest, perhaps a front of a fight, or perhaps a national border. A bulwark does not let things in, and bulwarks together form impenetrability. Mars defends himself from attacks directly at his front, but also range attacks coming for his allies with this move. He is a defender of the lives of soldiers, and he carries his shield over the heads of others, proverbially. So soldiers would give themselves to Mars to have them defend them because of their dedication and sacrifice and work in his name. So human peak, strongest body, worship Mars with your lifestyle, because humans are made for war. Arena of Blood. The Colosseum was the great arena of Rome, where crowds would gather to witness what they believed to be the ultimate test of strength. The Colosseum is famed for its bloodshed. I like to think that Mars is really a god of blood, too. So, here's why I think that. He has veins, for one, on his model that trace up and down his arms. He's also well known by players for jumping and shaking his arms in the air during Arena of Blood. So, there's a lot of display of human peak condition and blood flowing through the body. Mars takes his side with the greatest figure and example of a man because of how a display of battle changes history forever. He serves as a figure and inspiration of what to aspire to be in a fight. Arena of Blood can be used to establish dominance, both figuratively and literally. When someone playing Mars sees that their ally is superior to a nearby enemy, he can summon the Arena of Blood, and a circle of warriors appears and slays the inferior opponent. Witnesses make for important parts of war. Grand displays frequently ended battles of history, and Mars would certainly be present for them. In the game, the triumphant-sounding concerto Mars by Gustav Holst plays every time Mars uses his ultimate. Warriors want their work to be memorialized in the most memorable way possible that endures the test of time untaintable. In literature and in the past, songs were quite often commissioned by warriors and generals. This will be explored in videos on Axe and Pangolier, two Dota heroes that talk about bards and songs of their own, to guarantee there will always be an arena and that they will be matched against a worthy opponent, one that they can take the spirit of Mars with them and kill. Triumphant sounding Mars by Gustav Holst. That's a good note to end on. Music encapsulates the spirit of the moment, and the moment for Mars's topic is now ended. I hope you enjoyed.